Hi everybody, Devin Stone here. I do apologize for the little hiatus I took between creating these podcast episodes. I do resolve with my New Year's resolution to be more regular with that. So I'm sorry with that. There's been an awful lot going on with work and in my personal life, but this is very important. One thing I think when you're going through this healing process, which I really do believe that it is when we're working on the Oedipus complex, male-related issues, and personal development issues in regards to men in particular, is how isolating it can be. And I've heard this come up several times, and I know it's been true in my life as well. And I really think that it goes hand in hand with the Oedipus complex because of many reasons. The most important of those being that you're not free to go out into the world and live your own life. There's kind of a Munchausen syndrome, I think it's called. That's when a parent might keep their child sick or drug them to make them sick so that the parent can feel like a caretaker or good about themselves, or the parent or Oedipal mother, in the cases I deal with, doesn't feel abandoned. And that's exactly what the Oedipal mother does. The Oedipal mother attacks and finds strategies and ways of sabotaging her son's independence and autonomy, which is absolutely necessary in order to fulfill her own narcissistic needs and inputs. And so while you're busy servicing that, and you're kind of handicapped in other ways, like where is the power going to develop within you to be able to go out, live out in the world, and develop the confidence that you need to be extroverted, share your thoughts and feelings with the world, and attract people into your life that appreciate you for who you are. And so, like living at home with your mother is the ultimate form of social isolation, but you might carry that into your personal life even if you don't live with your mom or you're past that stage. So it can still be a problem there. But I really do think that this is an issue to look at because depression, anxiety, and social isolation are so common for those of us guys that have this problem. And that's because we've internalized that, well, we're really nothing without the ever-present smothering love of our mothers. I'm going to say that again. We are prone to depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem because we feel that we're not okay, we're nothing without our mothers, and that's classic enmeshment. That's two people living a shared emotional life, not you living your own emotional life. If you're doing that, then you feel good within yourself and confident, and therefore apt to be more approachable and more eager to make friends and so on. Moving on from that, I think that I have noticed a pattern in so many of these guys that I've been doing these coaching sessions with, and I'm really amazed to find how common the pattern is in the lifestyles that I'm seeing, and where things have gone awry, and the commonalities between that lifestyle and what I struggled with, because I had exactly the same issue. And so I'm going to take you through the numbers. First, as number one, we have, of course, all the childhood issues that I've discussed before, where either dad is either present or not emotionally present or checked out. A lot of guys, these guys have had dads at home, but dad wasn't interested and wasn't engaged, so mom was the strong one in the house. She ran the show. She was the boss. There are all kinds of problems with that, and these guys are not getting the proper inputs to get the male initiation that they needed. So that's one. We know that. Then step two, we have university life, which I'm finding most of the guys that I have coached did in fact go to college, and that's probably because that is expected of them, and they, it's kind of another way of being taken care of in a way. Unfortunately, that's what college life has become in this day and age. And so we have an extension of the academic establishment in your life. And the tragedy happens. It's true in my life and in like half a dozen at least of these guys I'm coaching, where they're saying, they crash land back at home with their mothers because they've invested the 4 years in or more in their education, and it was a lie. It didn't pan out in a job. And I want to discuss that because I want to discuss the most important thing, which is your freedom, your independence, and your autonomy as a man, as an adult. Being able to live on your own, make it on your own, and do what you want to with your own life, because that's what an adult is. That an adult male person is a man. And so it really irks me when I hear the promises made by the academic establishment, and K through 12 does it, and the university does it. University system does it as well, where they minimize the importance of the financial impact of the majors that people are choosing and the choices that they're making. First and foremost, the education rarely matches the employment style. In other words, if it were more of a internship type arrangement where perhaps you're not paying or you're paying for the privilege to be there and to learn, it should be much more of a tutorial, meaning what you're learning is almost identical or very similar to what you're going to be doing as a profession. But you have many disciplines in academia that don't mirror any profession at all. They're purely academic in nature, and they poo-poo, they dismiss, they give lip service to this idea that it should pay off financially for you, the person who is getting into debt or spending a lot of money or obligating his parents to spend money for this education. And the reality, the harsh reality of that situation really hits home when what you have to show for it is to move back in with your parents at the age of 22 to 24 or whatever it is. So you're well at the age where you should know what it means to be a man and live on your own and take care of things. I mean, I'm not encouraging this now, but it would be ridiculous for a man to be over, 20 and not be married and have kids, so you should be mature enough to do those things, but that's not what's happening in this day and age. And so it's little surprise that very tragically, so many young people today have favorable views. Approaching about 50% of people in the 20 to 30-year-old age bracket have favorable views of socialism over capitalism because they form these ideas in the university system, which is little more than an indoctrination training ground, and it's all a house built on sand. It's built on debt sand. All the beautiful trees and the golf course-like pristine, beautiful environment there is all subsidies and loans and printed and borrowed money. And that's how they're able to get away with this shell game, this dog and pony show of you can delay your maturity as an adult. You can live in like an extension of high school for another 4 years and convince yourself that financial independence and career are not important. And so this is another maternal arrangement. When we talk about socialism and fascism, for example, I really was struggling to find the difference because, as you should know, there really is no discernible difference between socialism and fascism. They're both authoritarian forms of big government control. They do tend to become militarized, and even like the most notorious fascist of all, Hitler, advocated state-controlled medicine and had all of these state programs and things like that, ran up massive debts and welfare state and things like that. But the difference in the two is one of branding. And with fascism is paternal in nature. It's like a father. The state is like a big military hierarchy. With socialism, it brands itself like a mother. It's maternal. The government takes care of you. You're a poor little baby. You're a little baby. Everyone's a little baby who can't take care of themselves. And it's seen as harsh and cruel to ask that of people, right? That's the conservative line. The conservatives' great critique of Democrats and socialists is, that people can stand on their own 2 feet. Sometimes you have to make them. Sometimes you have to challenge them, but it's good for them. And it's not good for them to have a welfare state that treats everyone like a invalid, like a baby who can't take care of themselves. Like we do have some people like that in our society. We have crippled and handicapped people and so on. But you'll notice that after the creation of the welfare state, independent donations to those individuals and organizations went down because we have less disposable income to donate. So it's kind of a catch-22, but I'm digressing a little bit. But the school system is something to take care of people and dismiss this this horrifying but also beautiful reality. The beautiful reality is that you need a career and you should learn things that translate directly into a career that you love, that you enjoy. I remember studying biology. I thought I was going to be pre-med because that was the right thing to do. I felt obligated to do it and whatever by my family and how messed up that was. And, so you study biology and the pre-med stuff is a bunch of bioscience and biochem and organic chemistry and things. But I hated medicine after that. So I got that career and I realized I hated being in hospitals. Like, ooh, wow, that's a harsh reality. And then so I thought, well, what jobs are there for someone with a biology degree? And it's all laboratory work. And I hated that too. I hated micropipetting. I hated putting on white lab coats. I hated the sterile lab environment. I found it very disinteresting, very boring. And so I thought, well, where was all that in the education that this was going to be the reality? And really what I think people should do if they're thinking of a career track is they should shadow people in those careers to see if they like it, because that's the end game. But a lot of times there are degrees and things you could pursue and get that don't have any career output at all, or the career output is extremely disappointing, really, really bad. Like the money is very poor, or it's very difficult to get a job. And these are all realities of the situation. So this is the second tragedy, because again, we're talking about the most important thing. And the most important thing is you living your independent, mature adult life. When I put myself out there as a coach in this area, I thought that I would get clients. I thought I would get a lot of clients that were more my age. I'm 39 years old. I thought I'd get married guys, maybe guys with some emotional issues and things, but were more or less on their own, but struggling in other things like maybe I was. But actually, the overwhelming majority of my clients have been these young guys. They've been these young men who are struggling with this exact same pattern in life. And that pattern is that these tragedies are beginning to cascade to a point where, unless they turn it around, it's going to be a disaster, and they're catching it very intelligently. Fortunately, these young men, they're between, let's say, 20 and 26, are catching the issue to the point where they can turn it around because it just doesn't feel right. They're realizing that there's a problem, and the problem is that they've we said the issue number one, or the great tragedy number one, is the upbringing that led to the whole thing, because there was no positive father role model to be the role model but also challenge them and foster the independence within them. Instead, you have this narcissistic mother figure who, out of her own depression and neediness, is sabotaging that because she doesn't want to be lonely. Okay, or under the guise of quote unquote helping her son, she sabotages all the things that they should be doing on their own, like balancing a checkbook, managing their finances, driving places, getting their own food, moving toward independence and moving out, and all these things. And Oedipal mothers resist this at various levels. You have mild cases and you have very extreme cases of this, where they're violating your privacy. I was reminded by a client today, I had forgotten to write about this or do podcasts about this, but my mother did this. What was interesting about my mom was that I had done extremely well in school. I had all those pressures on me, so I thought either I get straight A's or I'm a piece of garbage. So I was never felt good about myself, even for getting straight A's in high school and even younger than that. But I could take my pick of any college in the entire country, anyone. And my mom came in and she lied to me. I didn't know about the loans I could get, and I got in debt anyway, but she told me we can only afford, like we had plenty of money. I got loans anyway, a lot of them. I'm just still paying them off. I'm about to pay them off this year. I'm almost 40, This was back when I was 18, I got these loans, but that I had to go to the closest university in town. It was only 30 minutes away, and that, of course, that was so, and I had to stay at home with her. Well, that was all self-interest on her part. But she started to exert more and more intrusion and more control at an age where I felt I had earned, more independence. Here I'm going to college. I'm still at home. I was a good kid. Never partied. Never did anything. Would have done me some good to party. You don't want a bunch of stressed out, repressed kids. Like, sometimes you got to rebel a little bit. It's healthy. I had my rebellion later, probably after college. But so here I'm living at home, and I'm just going to the local college, way below, what I was capable of, And I find her, she's opening my bedroom door without knocking. And I asked her, you need to knock first. And she laughed at me. She mocked me. She said, "What do you have to hide? This is my house." Now we're talking really obvious, really disgusting intrusions and violations of personal boundaries and personal autonomy. And I remember once being so shamed when I had, what I had done is I had met a girl. And back in those days, it was a lot easier to meet new people. I remember we didn't have smartphones back then, and we barely had dating sites, but we had AOL, America Online, because I'm dating myself now. We had AOL, but we had high-speed internet for AOL, and they had these little, you had a little profile, and they had little chat rooms for people in your area, and a lot of times what you could do is you could start talking to someone, like a girl your age in your area, and you trade pictures, and if you liked each other, maybe you could meet and have a date. And that happened, and so I had gone out with this girl, and I had drawn a little map to her house, a little diagram to her house, and I had it in my drawer in my desk at home. And my mom had this very grave and serious expression on her face, and she said, "We need to talk." And I'll never forget how I was 19 years old, and she sat me down on my own bed. She's sitting on my bed, sat me down on my bed, and she had that piece of paper clutched in her two hands, sitting on her lap. And she said, "This is not a safe area. You're going to." And she had the diagram to this girl's house in her lap. And I said, "Where'd you get that? How did you get that?" She said, "Well, I was cleaning your desk and I found it." So the cleaning was an excuse to go through all of my drawers and all of my papers to what? To clean the inside of the desk and help herself into my room and rummage through all my things. And then safety, quote unquote safety, was the excuse for her to confront me for having committed the great Oedipal crime of dating a girl, because she's supposed to be my girl, her emotional property. So again, I am hearing from guys, their moms doing this, and to be in your 20s, even really in your teens, and have your mom doing this is deeply disturbing and inappropriate. And so you will notice that society itself, from academia, K through 12 academia, which is funded by the state, all the way through into the university system, is that maternal mother in action, that the government claiming to take care of you, or the precious loans that they have to guarantee for you through Sally Mae or whatever, or I guess Muela took it over for me or whatever, are there to take care of you and to make sure that you don't have to face that ugly reality of the real job. And so these guys are coming out of the university system completely unprepared and unable to function in the best economy the world has ever seen, even with the little stock market slip. I don't care. That's the sad thing, is that these kids are coming out of school with these negative attitudes. They're all about feminism and social justice and all this bullshit. And they have negative attitudes about capitalism, which is the very system that lets you live well and live your own life on your own terms, only because they were not given the proper inputs or the proper perspective for how to structure a life where you can build a life for yourself and make your own money and live independently. So, tragedy number three is that they have to move back in with their parents, and they're in this stupor because they are not able to get a job that can secure their own future, and they don't even have a plan for being able to make that happen, if that is even on the radar or not. So what I hear all too often is that they're living at home to save money, and the rationalization is that this is a wise thing to do. And I am not at all surprised that these Oedipal mothers are infecting their sons with this idea that this is wise and prudent and smart, because that way their little babies won't ever leave them. And I have to say I disagree. I think that that the move to independence should happen sooner, as soon as possible, and that there's really no amount of money you could put on. Here you are, you're listening to my stuff, and I thank you for that, my podcast, and you're reading my articles, and some by some others, or some great people in this field, that we loosely call like the manosphere, right? So, and you want to fix this manhood issue, yet you're not looking at the compromises you're making about how much that costs you. In other words, you don't want to pay the, depends on the city you're living in, but, I'd say $800 to $1,400 a month for rent somewhere. I mean, what kind of a price can you put on the development of yourself as a man in this world? Like, to me, that's the most important thing. And I had one client who had to do what I did, which is to study on his own for a new career after all that education, because that failed. Now, I moved out on my own because I sat and argued and yelled and screamed with my mother. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I got a bunch of roommates, lived in a crappy little apartment, 3-bedroom apartment, and put my little dress shirt on and went to work as an insurance claims adjuster, which is a horrible job. It was a stupid period, and I tried to save my clients from having to work bad jobs like that. It was a dry job, but I'll tell you, I got what I needed, which was the life experience, because I could have girls over, I could have girlfriends, I could rebel a little bit, act out, smoke weed with my friends, go party, go to clubs, and I needed that. Because there is no replacement for the path of development. Manhood is not a pill that you take. It's a path and a process and a journey. And you're either on the path or you're not. And what I try to do is show these young guys the path and help them get on the path. This is the path. The path is that you cannot replace or find a substitute for moving out on your own. And it doesn't take a lot of money to do that. Roommates aren't great, but I did it because I had to do it. And I think you should too if you have to. So I think that the correction needs to be made when the temptation is there to put the cart before the horse. And I hear all the same stuff. I hear the emotional problems. I hear the mental anguish, the arguments, the interpersonal problems, the issue with mom, social awkwardness and anxiety, issues with girls and all these things. And I say, these are all problems, but there's a bigger problem, which is that we're not doing the foundational exercises that I think will serve as the foundation to fixing all those other issues. It's like we want to talk about painting the wall in a house before we build the foundation. Buy the lot space, dig the foundation out, and build the foundation. Because if we have that, and then we have a sturdy foundation, we have a house on top of it, it's easy to talk about repainting walls. For example, I've never been kissed and I'm a virgin and I've never had a girlfriend. It's like, well, how are you going to get a girlfriend when you live at home with your mommy? Because you probably could find a girl who's willing to fool around with you in the car and even be your girlfriend, but she's going to drag you down, not lift you up. You're in this depressed, crappy space, so you're going to have to find a girl who's in an equally depressed, crappy space, and you'll both be depressed and crappy together and reinforce each other's bad energy and bad habits, and that's bad. So it's actually good. It's better to see the reality of it and why that's making you live a losery existence than medicate it with crap and stay where you're at. Because those guys are completely far gone. A lot of times they're beyond helping are the guys who are getting laid. Yeah, but then I drove to my girlfriend's house and I fuck her and I got her pregnant but now I go back home to my mom. It's like they're really stuck. So you think you're in bad shape, but you're really not, because it's very good to see that you're not getting what you want in life and your situation is not optimal. So let's talk about that. Socializing, friends, girls. Yeah, well, it's a lot easier to do all those things when you have a cool, swaggering, adult, young male life than making those compromises and excuses and rationalizations and living at home with one or both parents. Your energy and your confidence won't be there otherwise. So imagine, if you will, if you're working on this stuff and 12 to 24 months from now, you moved out on your own. Well, now you're much more attractive to girls. If you have a job that you like, there's something interesting about you that you can use to connect with other people. If you're a junior programmer, let's say, or web developer or designer, you can make friends with people in your office and they'll want to come over and hang out with you because you have that thing in common. You're all a part of the game. You're playing this game of being a free adult. So your energy, your time, and your space is freed up. That's the foundation. And then because your confidence is going up, because you're actually doing those things, you'll find socializing much more natural because you'll feel good about yourself. Same thing with girls and dating. Not too many quality girls want to date a guy who lives at home with his parents, but they're very attracted to this independence thing. Women are great experts in what they consider to be a man because the heterosexual women, at least, are attracted to men. So listen to what they say they want. If all the women in dating sites say no guys who live with their mom, please don't complain and cry to me about not being able to get any pussy or kissing or whatever. You're not doing those things, but beware the voice in you that tells you that those things are not important. Those things are the things that define being a man. Men are sexually active. Men are interested in women. When a man meets a woman, we're sexual, romantic beings. And so I really don't want to get into all these subtleties when you guys want to fix a Band-Aid or a quick fix, a cure-all pill that doesn't involve taking the necessary steps. And I've always been able to find a path and some steps to solving this foundational problem. You have to be able to look at and realize that these tragedies, 1 through 3, have in fact occurred. That this is not a good thing. It hurts to realize that maybe the university didn't do what you felt it would do, that you got a worthless degree. It's okay. I mean, and forge a career for yourself if you can, quickly, and if not, get a job and some roommates so that you can be out on your own. I don't know how that can go to the bottom of the pile in your list of priorities, because I'll tell you what, guys, I'll do it one day. I'll do it when I've saved up enough money. I mean, anyone on earth can make that excuse. I could do it. I could say, oh man, I would save so much money not paying rent and living in my mama's basement. But why won't I do it? Well, there's no way, because I would be sacrificing my life. And you know something? You think the issue is, well, my mom is controlling. Like, she gets in my face, asks me where I'm going, what I'm doing, all these inappropriate questions, right? Because a man doesn't have to answer to anybody. But the thing is that there is that, or can be that expectation when you're living under someone else's roof. Because there's always that awareness that you're there, and you're there at their hospitality, and that if they're the controlling type person, of course, I'm not excusing that controlling behavior and violating your privacy and so on, but that's the power play that people get to play with you when you're living under their roof. Oh, well, I'm gonna control what he does. I'm gonna go through his shit. I'm gonna burst in his bedroom. It's not, just to remind you, that's not your room, it's my room. I own it. I own the roof. Just to let you know who's wearing the pants, who the boss is. And that's the whole problem. How can you convince me that it's worth it when really you are the subservient person in this arrangement and always will be? There's always this skepticism at first. There's like, but I'm leaving comfortably. It's like, yeah, you're comfortable, but the comfort is killing you. I've known guys in my life who live with their moms at 30, live with their moms at 40. I knew a guy back when I thought I fancied myself a business owner who would just live with his mom forever. Like, that's just what you did. You live with your family and you never moved out. And of course, they'd arguments and bicker about who's doing what. I mean, none of this makes for an independent man. I'm very wary of entrepreneurship, by the way, that I've heard this also while I'm just working on this business idea. It's like, you again are using that as an excuse, like you're going to leapfrog from being poor to being rich, and your mommy is here to subsidize that, and she's happy to do that because it keeps you there with her. Entrepreneurship is great. You still need a job. Moonlight the entrepreneurial stuff. Do it. And I'm not saying don't do it. But I really resent this school of thought that says you just skip all the process, you skip all that stuff, you're a little genius, just start a business. There's a reason why the people who did those things are famous. They're famous because it's so fucking rare. It's very rare. It's very rare that there was a Zuckerberg in college that went straight into that. Or a Bill Gates or a Steve Jobs, but even they had jobs. Even Steve Jobs, he worked for Atari and they worked for HP and they got jobs and then they went out on their own. So it's kind of bullshit. But this is fundamental responsibility to yourself. And that involves doing those things that give you that most important thing, that irreplaceable thing that you have no one to answer to but yourself. That's what being a man is, and that is the foundation to the road to manhood. There's no replacing it. I mean, thank you for buying my book and reading things, like buying, reading other people's stuff and all of that and doing the research. That's a great first step. But then it's like, well, we have to solve this problem. How are we going to do it? I can't metaphysically bamboozle you into being a man. You have to walk the path. Walking the path means because you didn't get the male initiation, you have to self-initiate. You have to push yourself out of the nest, out of the mother's womb, off of the mother's teat, and do what it takes to go out and make it on your own. Now, I had a guy who, as I was saying, got through this whole education and there are no jobs for what he had. But he did have an aptitude for web development, and he said he was studying a little on the side. He had an aptitude for it. So I asked him, well, how are you studying? He said, oh, YouTube videos here and there. So I said, well, the issue with that is that it's not structured enough of an education to give him the skills in order to get his first job in web development. It's a great career. There's plenty of jobs for that. So I turned him on to lynda.com. They're not paying me, by the way. They really should. But lynda.com. Yeah. Not Lynda. lynda.com. They've been purchased by LinkedIn. And they have entire courses of self-instruction. You can follow the path. You can get certificates to show potential employers. And what you can do is what I did. You can build a new career and get a new education, a complete education in technology for $37.50 a month. Like, how do you beat that? I don't know how you can beat that. So anyway, this is what I led this young guy for. He was 22 years old, and I said to him, now, he was all wound up and worried and fretting and having a meltdown over his narcissistic Oedipal mother who was in his face and telling him what to do. You do this, you do that. And what I gave him was a path to his own independence where in 12 months, if he stuck to the plan was he was to take his laptop and get out of the house and study this stuff for 8 hours a day because he could afford to do that. And instead of living off his mother in this never-ending cycle, he could actually use her. She's keeping the roof over his head, giving him 3 meals a day. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he doesn't need a lot of money. And here in secret, he's working this plan so that he can get his first job as maybe a paid intern or junior web developer, because the most important experience is on the job. He's not going to go from 0 to 6 figures on the first go. But he needed the skills in order to prove himself and his desire to learn to get a junior position. He could get his own little studio apartment or maybe one roommate somewhere and get the F out of his mother's house. So I'm not talking a 4-year plan. I was talking a 12-month plan. So the most important asset that he had was discipline. So he had to leverage that. He didn't have a lot of time or a lot of money. Well, he did have time. He had time and not a lot of money. So he had to make up for that with discipline. That became the most important thing. Whatever power you have in order to make it happen, make it happen. I cautioned him against jumping the gun and moving out, go working at McDonald's and getting 3 roommates, because I felt that that would actually sabotage the best chance for success that he had. If his home life was so intolerable that he couldn't stand it for another day, that's one thing. But he could put up with it for 12 more months, because in 12 months he's going to have a completely different life and be on a path toward mastery and a profession. And to be a young, confident working professional is a wonderful, beautiful experience. So then he came in, he brought up this other thing, right? He brought up an emotional or interpersonal and emotional issue, which is, yeah, but I'm really socially awkward. What else can we do about that? I said, hey man, I would expect you to be socially awkward. You live with your mom and you have no career. You see, these things are not so mysterious as they sound. A lot of times there's a reason why we feel the way we feel. If you feel bad, accept and explore the reason why you feel bad. Don't blame yourself for feeling that way. Go, I shouldn't feel that way. You feel that way for a reason. Same thing. He didn't have success socially. I'm awkward socially. I said, well, of course you're awkward socially. Why would anyone want to hang out with you? Bunch of losery guys. You are, in fact, living the life of a losery guy. You live with your mom. You have no career. You're just sitting around, being her slave, helping her with her little realty web business or whatever. So I told him, well, continue to do that, because we're going to play your mom, and then you're going to quit in 12 months. But anyway, I told him, that this is the thing. Again, the foundation. I said, you're not going to feel socially awkward anymore when you are kicking ass in a job. Could be your next job or your second or third job in web development, and you got a bunch of cool friends that are your age that are all interested in the same thing, that have all that in common, that are inviting you out to drinks and coming over and playing video games and board games and having fun, and you're dating because you're living this adult life, and the socialization will take care of itself, because the isolation comes with this ridiculous repressed Oedipal lifestyle. So all of a sudden, everything starts falling into place, and these guys see how that toxic lifestyle is causing all these problems that before were completely mysterious. They just don't make any sense at all. I feel your emotions are in chaos, your relationships are in chaos, your emotional life is in chaos, and your financial life is in chaos. But really, we have to take things to the ground zero, the starting point. So I have some background in Kabbalah, and in Kabbalah there's this tree of life path toward enlightenment, but it starts at what we call Malkuth, which is the physical world. And in our environment here, it's also it's the physical world, but it's also materiality, it's money, it's finances, and you have to start there. That's step one. You need to get that in order before you can proceed into matters of mind and psyche and emotion. And you have to start at the base of the tree and you work your way up. So this is the same thing. That actually is step one. You can't think to become this enlightened person, or even, we can talk about it and work on the emotional things, but this is like you're not going to move up the path unless you get this in order. Another fellow who I coached, it was he had the money, but it was more of an anxiety thing, or something where the fear was that he was making the wrong moves and he could save money by living at home, but he made plenty of money. And again, that was the issue, was he is now, but he wasn't seeing the cost. And it was only when the cost was felt, and the cost was, the cost is your sanity and your development of a man. What's that worth to you? What's the price tag on that? Because that's what you're giving up, living at home with your parents. And a lot of these parents are happy to plan out your entire financial life. They're going to tell you that this is the smart thing to do. You stay here with us and you save all this money you're making. You're making $90,000 a year, $80,000 a year. But isn't this great? We're giving you this house and you can just sock that money away. But they're running your life. there's no amount of money you could give me that would tell me that it's worth it for me to continue to live with either parent. I mean, the cost is an intangibly high cost. It's like the national debt. It's in the trillions of dollars. It's like you couldn't possibly afford to pay me what it's worth. It's worth my whole life. That's my life. It's my adult life. And that's the problem. That's the issue that's happened, is that you guys have not been taught to value that. You get it? That's why you're all depressed. You're like, oh, this is, I just don't feel right. But then, I felt that this was a good idea. No one was there to say, this is the thing, man. This is life. This is the most important thing. Telling young men that gets them back on track. Everything starts to fall back into place. When we look at the hierarchy of your needs and the base of your tree, your foundation, that we can rationalize so much shit. If you sacrifice your adulthood, on the altar of mommy taking care of you, and rationalize all of these decisions as smart moves because you took your adult life and threw it in the trash. It's the worst, most tragic move a man could possibly make. You're on the road to disaster. It's way better to move out and bum around with some bummy roommates and be on your own than do that. And man, I mean, I went through that phase and I was a fuck off and a loser and a bum, but at least I got to own that. At least it was mine. Like I could go have sex with random weird pot smoky girls or whatever, but I did not have a parent in my face to hide from. That's the developmental stage that I needed. Wouldn't trade that for anything. When I stress the importance of this, you guys, your eyes light up because you realize that really is the problem, and that there is no path to development without doing this. How do you develop into a man? You're not going to walk the path that should have been laid out for you by a father figure from way, way young, where you're excited to do it when you're of the age to do it, and your parents are your cheerleaders encouraging you to do it. Yeah, they close the door and they cry because they miss you, but they're not going to do it in front of you. They're not going to put those emotional hooks into you and give you those expectations that you should feel guilty and that you should stay. They should be kicking you out the door, off to college, go travel the world, go out of state for school, go do those things. My parents did the opposite. My mother did the opposite. You leave me, you're leaving me. Unfucking believable. And that's abuse. Come on, that's abuse. What's the most important thing? We're talking about your development as a male adult human being, a man. What is more important than that? No, you can't do it meditating in your bedroom. It doesn't work. So, like this Oedipal thing, yes, it's emotional and it's psychological and all these things, but you guys aren't willing to do the thing that breaks it. The biggest blow to that you could take, the thing that severs it. How could you possibly solve it when you're still living at home? I wouldn't want a girlfriend that was okay with that. That's a shitty girlfriend. That's not a woman. You're just playing at being a kid. You're having a cute little thing like she comes over to your house after school. I mean, that's what that's like when I see these young people, they live with their parents and they have a little girlfriend. It's like, well, what, are you 17? You 16? I mean, so it's like, what is a man's life like? And a man is independent, makes his own decisions, doesn't argue or get in discussions with other people about what he's going to do, is careful about who he seeks advice from. Like, I remember, because this problem, it's something that goes on and that you have to work on. So I had Oedipal issues even into my 30s. I was living on my own by then, but every little thing I call my parents for advice. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? I need to pay for my own insurance. What do I do? I wasn't exercising my independence. Ask advice when it's important from sources you trust. Like I go to Dave Ramsey for advice on finances because it's a source I trust. You ask your parents for everything. You're delegating adulthood to them. You're not exercising your own decision-making capacity. And being wrong and making mistakes are what strengthen that. If I can do those things, but if I fuck up and I look back and go, God, was I stupid? I fucked up. That's wisdom talking. Initiation has fear at its source, because fear and excitement are like kissing cousins. They go together. And a lot of times what we're afraid of and what we're avoiding is the path we need to go on. So I'm going to close it here, and I hope this was helpful. Have a great day.